Welcome to Cozy Dreams, where we listen, we relax, and we get sleepy. I'm your host, Brian. Today will be stories about spring that I have read. So simply settle in and relax, ready to enjoy the beauty of spring while you drift off to sleep, so you can wake up tomorrow feeling as fresh and renewed as the season itself. The birds are chirping and calling out to one another. The smell of pine and herbs travels through the open windows in the living room. It's one of the warmest days so far this season, and Sarah is tingling with excitement for what's to come. The temperature outside was perfect this morning, so the first thing Sarah did today was open the large windows to let in the fresh air and bright spring sun. She adores spring. It's not her favorite season, but she admires its craft. The way the earth wakes up from its hibernation and slowly comes back to life, bursting into full, vivid color after the gray of winter. It's like when color came to motion pictures. A once black and white world has turned into a vibrant one. Sarah is currently tidying up the living room. She laughs to herself at the thought of spring cleaning. Perhaps seeing the bright sun kiss the grass again motivates everyone and sends them straight to the broom closet, she thinks. It does feel magical to have the sheer white curtains open and the beaming sun casting light on the wooden floor. That's why Sarah is happily twirling around the house as she sweeps. Her broom sends up specks of dust that sparkle in the rays of light streaming through the glass. As she often does, Sarah is listening to one of her favorite albums on her record player. The song that's playing now is a bright and cheerful tune, perfect for Sarah's current mood. She has spent most of the morning dancing, cleaning, and singing into her broomstick, and has tidied up every room. Now, she's almost finished, and she scoots the last of the winter's dust into the dustpan. Then, she walks down the hallway towards the kitchen, carrying the broom and dustpan, careful not to tip it over. A colorful bouquet of light paints the hallway, thanks to the stained glass with a mosaic pattern on her front door. Sarah tiptoes through the reflected colors until she is at the end of the hall, facing the kitchen. She walks over to the bin and empties the dust into it. Then she heads to the opposite corner to put the cleaning supplies away. She turns the metal doorknob of her broom closet. It feels cold to the touch as she pulls the door open. Sarah then places the broom and dustpan back into their cozy spaces, tucked away from the light. When she's done, the door clicks shut. She retraces her steps back to the living room and is greeted once again by the smell and beauty of spring in the mountain cabin. The curtains are fluttering as the fresh breeze blows through the open windows. It looks beautiful, Sarah thinks. She stands in front of the glass, holding her arms out to her sides, and slowly breathes in deeply through her nose. Then, she closes her eyes and lets the feeling of the gentle wind caress her. Why stay inside on such a bright and warm spring day, Sarah thinks to herself. Her mind made up, she turns around and makes her way back to the hall. The mosaic is still casting a variety of colors on the wooden floorboards. Sarah smiles, appreciating the quiet beauty of this moment. She keeps her shoes by the door, careful not to drag in too much dirt from the outside world. Above the shoe corner is a tall, dark coat rack draped in winter jackets and scarves with a selection of hats on top. She rustles through the knitted winter caps until she reaches her straw bucket hat. There's a pleasant feeling in her chest at the thought of getting to wear it again. Honestly, She can't remember the last time it was warm enough to put it on. Sarah feels the straw's rough texture in her hand as she holds the wide brim hat in front of her. She slips it over her shiny hair, and the hat crackles as it settles into place. Sarah contemplates what to put on her feet. She's torn between sandals and her comfy gardening shoes. After a moment of contemplation, she slips on her socks and shoes, knowing all too well that she'll want to get started on her garden the minute she steps outside. All ready to go, Sarah reaches for the metal doorknob. Despite the warmth of the day, the metal here also feels cold to the touch. It sends a pleasant little shiver down Sarah's spine, but all is forgotten when she opens the door and is quickly embraced by the warm sun and aroma of early spring. Sarah steps out onto the big wooden porch that wraps around the house. It's dotted with plants and outdoor furniture. A bird feeder hangs on the side closest to her living room window. Birds gather there in the mornings and afternoons for a tasty snack and a chat. Almost like people visiting their favorite coffee shop, Sarah takes a moment to admire her spectacular view. She is certain she has one of the very best views around. The rugged mountains reach up to the cloudless blue sky in the distance. Sarah has always thought they have an almost magical energy about them. As she scans the landscape, she can see layers of forest green pine trees that slowly fade into a windswept meadow where wildflowers grow. They tend to blossom a bit later in the season, but it was a wet winter, and Sarah knows that helps the soil and the plants to thrive once the snow melts away. Closer to her cabin, there is a small fire pit with carefully placed wooden logs. She enjoyed evenings there with friends during the winter, at least those who were brave enough to embrace the cold. With help of the cozy fire and woolly blankets Sarah knitted herself, she could still have friends around for a bonfire over the coming season. Sarah thinks to herself, spring is a wonderful time to gather outside by the warmth of a crackling fire. But for now, the area rests quietly with the beautiful meadow and mountain backdrop. As she continues to cast her gaze over the field, she notices something furry and white nestled in the grass. Sarah looks closer, and her heart swells as she realizes it's a bunny. They love the mountains here, and although she sees them quite often at this time of year, they still never fail to brighten her day. At Sarah's cabin, there is a set of stairs that leads down to ground level. She follows them, and the wood creaks with every other step. The sound causes the bunny to notice her, and it darts off into the pine forest. Sarah looks down at her feet, focusing on the earth below them. The grass is still young, coming back from the cold days of winter, but it looks vibrant and healthy. She walks towards the field, feeling the dewy soil underneath her shoes with every step. She is grateful for the dampness, because she knows it's going to create a season overflowing with color and new growth. As she gets closer to the meadow, she begins to smile even wider. She can see a group of small wildflowers beginning to blossom. Sarah crouches down and leans in to get a closer look. The green buds look ready to burst and to showcase their colors. Typically, purple, pink, yellow and white flowers grow in this meadow. They dance in the wind all season long. The flowers are a delight to watch from her porch as she sips her morning tea or coffee. It's one of her favorite pastimes. Sometimes, when she's feeling especially inspired, she spends the morning painting the scene with soft watercolors. She even has a painting of this view hanging in her hallway. Sarah thinks it might be a bit silly to have a painting hanging up on her wall of something she can look out her window and admire, but she keeps it there anyway. It makes her smile, and that is all that matters, she tells herself. Sarah stands back up and takes one more look at the budding flowers. Then she decides to walk around the house to where the garden is located. She sees the resilient blue spruces that line the side of her house as she walks. Sarah made a careful effort to plant things that would be able to sustain the frigid winters in the mountains. The blue spruce not only survives, but it looks beautiful in doing so. She enters the backyard through a quaint gate that rattles as she opens it. She shuts the gate behind her and looks out at her beloved garden. White lattice panels are draped in English ivy, and next to them rests a small wooden table and a couple of chairs. There's a pathway with little stones on either side. Next to the path are plants and open spaces where Sarah can grow seasonal herbs and vegetables. Some of the plants are doing extremely well in these early spring days. She looks over at the section of catmint, an aromatic plant that resembles lavender, and is delighted to see its purple tips basking in the sun. Some of her plants will come back on their own, like mint, lavender, and sage. Others, like basil, carrots, and lettuce, she will have to replant in the coming days. Against the wall of her cabin, she has a shed with some gardening essentials. She strolls over to it and pulls out a trowel or tiny shovel that she can use to check the soil and uncover any budding plants. Sarah makes her way to the section of the garden that houses the mint. This is one of her favorite herbs to keep. It's fast growing and adds a delicious flavor to teas and some of the dishes she likes to cook. Sarah bends down, not worried about getting dirt on her knees, and inspects the plants. She uses her hands and the trowel to search for new mint. Mint has a habit of spreading and taking over gardens, so it's often one of the first plants to show up in spring. If there is a new plant, she would like to pot it and give it to one of her neighbors. In this rural mountain village, the community is such an essential part of what makes it a sustainable and enjoyable place to call home. All of her neighbors like to trade things with one another. For example, one makes candles, another makes wooden furniture, another has chickens and shares their fresh eggs. Sarah grows plants and knits all sorts of cozy things. Sarah feels the sun against her back and the cool, damp soil on her knees and hands. As she searches for the mint, after just a few moments, she feels a small root. She stands up, shakes her hands, and wipes the clumps of earth off her knees. By the shed, there are a few ceramic pots. Sarah grabs one and then pulls open a bag of soil and uses the trowel to scoop some into the pot. Once the pot is about halfway full, she makes her way back to the mint. Sarah carefully sticks the trowel into the mud and gently scoops up the root and surrounding clump of soil. She uses her fingertips to make a spot in the center of the pot and softly places the plant inside. She fiddles with the dark brown soil until the root is resting in just the right place. What a perfect spring present, Sarah thinks. Back inside the kitchen, Sarah has wooden lollipop sticks that she can use to make handwritten signs for her plants. She'll make one and put it in this pot as a gift for her neighbor. She wipes her hands together once again to remove excess soil and carries the ceramic pot toward the back door of the cabin. Sarah goes up the few creaky steps hidden in the shade as she makes her way to the door, which leads straight into the kitchen. Like the rest of her cabin, The kitchen is mostly made of wood. It boasts rustic decor and hanging plants. A lingering aroma of lavender invites her in, but Sarah remembers to kick off her shoes before going into the main part of the house. Once inside, she places the pot on the counter and pulls open one of the drawers below it. Bits and bobs and kitchen supplies rustle against her hand as she searches for the lollipop sticks and a marker pen. She quickly finds both and writes mint vertically on the light brown stick, which she then carefully pokes into the pot. Content with her work, Sarah drops the pen back in the drawer and pushes it closed, leaving the plant on the counter. Bringing her hands up to her face, she looks at the way her time in the garden has left its mark on them. She admires the soil nestled in the creases of her skin. She moves over to the metal sink and pushes down on the top of a bottle of hand soap. The fresh aroma of citrus fills her senses. She rubs her hands together, lathering each finger. The liquid quickly begins to foam up, and Sarah continues to rub her palms, taking a moment to focus on every crease in her skin. She then turns on the tap and runs her hands under the warm water. Sarah takes her time washing her hands, making sure they are totally clean before drying them on a linen kitchen towel. This vibrant spring day has been both productive and inspiring for Sarah, and now she wants to relax. Making her way down the hall, she hears the record player still chiming a happy tune. Sarah smiles and dances lightly along with the song as she places her hat on the coat rack. Though Sarah imagines she could easily go back to dancing in the living room like she did this morning while cleaning, she decides against it. It's time to focus on pure relaxation. As she walks over to the record player, she sees that the sunshine isn't as bright as it was the last time she was in this room. Turning towards the window, she notices that the wind feels a bit cooler as it rustles the curtains. Beyond the curtains, the sky has transformed. There still aren't any clouds, but now it's filled with deep shades of orange and pink, like the colors of tropical fruits. It's an idyllic scene, like something out of a painting. She pushes the window down to close it, and the dancing curtains fall still. She can't believe how fast the day has gone by. Now that evening has arrived, it's time to put on some soothing music. She continues walking over to the record player, removes the album, and puts on a more mellow and relaxing one. Next, she makes her way over to the large cushioned sofa. There are a couple of pillows on it, and she places them both on the right side. She lies down, propping her head on the stack of pillows and gazing out at the dreamy, setting sun. In this moment, Sarah feels completely at peace and content. She rests her hands on her belly and feels her deep breaths coming in and out, rhythmically. As she does this, she slowly closes her eyes. She thinks about how enchanting this time of year is, in these mountains. The soft sun and gentle wind, the blooming flowers, and the rugged landscape that surrounds her. They all help make spring one of the most beautiful seasons here. Sarah continues to daydream about the coming weeks. She will probably visit the farmer's market this weekend and bring friends around for a cozy bonfire. Hopefully it will be an evening with another fiery sunset like this one. As her mind continues to wander, Sarah feels her body moving towards sleep. The soothing music in the background slowly fades away as Sarah drifts into a magical dream. Welcome to the Amazon rainforest. It's divided by the longest river in the world, which surges across more than 6,000 kilometers of the South American continent. In the rainforest, there's a constant buzz in the humid air. These are the sounds of the countless animals and insects that live here, communicating through chirps, clicks, and whistles. Over 1 million species coexist in this fascinating place. Moving away from the river, the forest thickens. There are narrow mud paths trodden into the earth, surrounded by a maze of vegetation. Guarded by the dense foliage, the creatures that live here are in their own private world. They move freely through the forest, up and through the trees. The monkeys of the Amazon can usually be found up towards the canopy, swinging from branch to branch. But right now, a large black howler monkey is ambling across the ground near the riverbank. He moves nimbly through the dust on all fours. Across the river, a jaguar watches the howler monkey. She remains still for a moment, sensing her surroundings with her powerful nose. Then, she decides to move towards the water to get closer to the monkey. Smooth rocks emerge above the surface of the gushing river. Placing one paw after the other, the jaguar tries to maintain her balance on the cool stones. Her long claws scratch the rocks with each step. This sound attracts the monkey's attention. He turns around, searching for the source of the noise. Meanwhile, the jaguar sinks onto the rocks in the river. The refreshing coolness of the water seeps into the fur on her stomach, while the muggy forest air warms her back. This perfect combination of heat and chill calms the jaguar, and her breathing slows. As she breathes, her stomach slides back and forth along the cool rocks. She closes her eyes and relaxes for a moment. The rich scents of the rainforest waft towards her nose, and she breathes in all of the aromas. When she opens her eyes, she sees that the monkey has wandered off into the trees. But the jaguar doesn't mind. The Amazon is the most biodiverse place on Earth. There are plenty of other animals to look at. Now, another smell approaches. It's a strange aroma, both sweet and sharp. The jaguar turns and looks through the trees behind her, wondering who this scent belongs to. And as she looks up, she sees it. The anaconda, the huge snake, hangs from the lower branches of a tree, its sparkling greens and blacks shimmering in the light. The smooth scales are covered with an ornate pattern of black shapes. The anaconda is at ease here, hanging patiently from the tree. It could happily linger here all day. There's only one creature that can dislodge it from its resting place. The jaguar inhales deeply, then lets out a roar. The noise echoes through the trees, sounding more powerful with each reverberation. All of the nearby animals scurry away. Sensing these vibrations, the snake quickly slithers into the forest in search of a more peaceful tree branch, settling down on the rocks again. The jaguar is cushioned by a spongy moss. Overhead, some macaws squawk happily as they soar through the air, carried by the wind. The golden parakeets then soar up into the light, where they're unburdened by the humidity of the trees. Occasionally they even burst through the top of the silky mist above the canopy. The glorious sunlight shines on their vivid yellow plumage, so each feather resembles a sunflower petal. Then, the birds go back into the mist, enjoying their exhilarating dash through the sky. After flapping for so long, their wings begin to feel loose and tired. The parakeets drift down towards the trees, dropping comfortably through the mist and back into the forest. To the birds, this place smells like home. The fresh greenery is mixed with the comforting scents of their nests. In one of these nests, polished eggs are blanketed by fragrant leaves, keeping the chicks warm. The mother parakeet cradles an egg in the crook of her powerful wing, knowing they will hatch in the next day or two. At dusk, the sunlight fades, and the parakeets settle down to roost. There's a buzz in the air during this beautiful twilight period. Both the nocturnal and diurnal animals seem to be awake. Nocturnal animals are those who sleep during the day and are awake at night, while diurnal animals rise and move with the sun. And then, among all the noises of the forest, there's a quiet tinkling sound. One of the parakeet eggs now has a maze of thin cracks. A small ivory beak pokes out of the shell, swiveling around. Slowly, the beak pushes around the edge of the shell, feeling for a weaker part. Then, with a majestic shattering, the newborn chick emerges from the egg. One by one, the other chicks hatch. By morning, 5 golden birds are huddled in the nest, hopping about as they encounter life. She's much larger than her calf and has a sleek grey coat that ripples as she moves. The mother tapir communicates with her child using a unique series of clicks and whistles. She tells him to stay by her side and ushers him away from the caiman's resting spot. Then, the pair of tapirs trot off back to the safety of the forest. With the tapirs gone, the caiman is left to bask alone in the sun, enjoying the peaceful solitude for a while. But nearby, the rainforest is teeming with life. A small grey opossum wanders across the ground, and a bulbous toad hops by. There are all kinds of amphibians in the Amazon rainforest, including a variety of glass frogs. One of them is hopping along right now in a nearby clearing. From a distance, she looks like any regular frog, with smooth green skin and spindly fingers and toes. The webbing on her feet allows her to jump more easily from tree to tree. A long pink tongue is rolled up inside her mouth, which is shaped into a thin-lipped smile. The frog uses her powerful throat to make a vibrating, ribbiting sound. This gliding melody harmonizes with the calls of her companions in the forest. The poison dart frog, the golden-eyed tree frog, and the smoky jungle frog each has its own little tune of rolling croaks, providing the droning bass for the symphony of the rainforest. What makes the glass frog special is that she can camouflage herself, turning her skin transparent to avoid detection. It's a unique, entirely natural form of protection. Although they're not exactly a pack, the frogs often keep company, colonizing entire trees at a time. Sometimes they'll paddle about amongst the marshes together, keeping an eye on the colorful fish that swim past. The glass frog mostly lives a slow, peaceful existence, but these relaxing pauses during the day are building up to a thrilling flurry of action. When the frog jumps, she bends her spindly but powerful legs, launching herself into the air. All the tension from her body vanishes as she floats, arms and legs flapping in the breeze. The glass frog soars over the shrubbery. When she's airborne, her joints become wonderfully loose, and her entire body is relaxed. Then, the target tree approaches. Her sticky feet catch the leaf perfectly. Now, she can watch the joy of the other frogs bounding about and catch her breath as she prepares to jump again. Later in the day, after a rest, the frog decides to look for a new adventure. She shimmies down the tree and moves towards the river. Here, the scales of orange fish glint in the sunlight. The fish send small bubbles towards the surface, which make a glugging sound as they pop, unleashing her springy legs. The frog dives into the river. She stays under the surface, only briefly, soaking her dry body. then leaps out of the water. The frog sails through the air towards a twisted log sticking out of the river. As she perches on the gnarled wood, she can feel the ridges of the wet bark under her webbed feet. Below in the clear water, little grey tadpoles are wriggling around. A moment later, the frog is off again, diving into the depths to be with the tadpoles. They swarm around her, their movements creating minute currents. Then, after a quick swim, the frog springs up out of the water and draws in a long breath. All this movement is tiring. The frog needs to rest for a while, so she bounds onto a nearby tree and sits on a low branch. Here, she catches sight of another creature who's also enjoying a rest. This motionless ball of fur is a sloth reclining on the tree branch, while the other creatures of the forest rush around. The sloth lives by his own clock. When he's finally ready to move, the sloth clings to the massive tree trunk, hooking into the sturdy wood with his long, smooth claws. He hugs the trunk tightly, feeling safe and secure here. Then, as he begins to climb, his small, beady eyes slowly look upwards. The sloth's eyesight is weak, and when he gazes in the direction of the distant canopy, it's little more than a blur. But he can use his powerful sense of smell and touch to navigate as he climbs the tree, ambling onto a branch. The sloth's muscular limbs begin to feel heavy, weary from climbing. The sloth lets his long arms and legs dangle freely. He feels the tension flowing down and disappearing. This branch is the perfect width, allowing the sloth's stomach to rest comfortably. He lets his furry body go limp, and his eyelids gently close. As he rests here in the shade, he's fanned by the branches that move in the breeze above him, letting in occasional rays of sunlight. Even in his sleepy state, the sloth remains aware of his surroundings. His sensitive nose can still detect the scents of insects. He smells the ants and spiders on the forest floor and dragonflies near the riverbank. To the sloth, some insects are sweet, while others have a powerful, bitter scent. After a short rest, the sloth moves along the branch, shuffling back to the trunk. He feels like a change of scenery, so he can experience a different branch or even a different tree. The sloth enjoys testing all of nature's mattresses, but there's no rush, and he's cautious to avoid disturbing the peace of the other resting animals. He moves slowly and deliberately through the tree. On his way to the next branch, the sloth decides to stop for a snack. He rarely feels hungry, as his stomach is just as patient and unhurried as the rest of him. But these leaves look particularly tasty, so he reaches out and clutches a fistful. There's a soft crackle as he pulls the leaves from the tree. Then, the sloth languidly brings the leaves towards his mouth and chews slowly, savoring the juicy taste. They are fresh, but they also have a spicy tang. He leans against the trunk, eyes closed, as he works through this meal. Now, resting on softer bark, the sloth wraps himself around another branch. This time, he's perched high up in the canopy, ready for a nice long rest. Closing his eyes, the forest dims, and then, once again, the sloth drifts into sleep, dreaming of starry nights, beautiful sunrises,